So one of the big benefits of doing a UX bootcamp is the fact that I get to work on real client projects. And so at this point, I've worked on 2 real client projects with a group of designers, and then I have 1 conceptual case study. So at this point, I have 3 pieces on my portfolio, and usually that's enough to apply for jobs. But for me personally, maybe it's just like imposter syndrome or whatever, but I felt like it wasn't enough. And so I wanted to get another client project to bolster it a bit. And so I decided to join another project through my bootcamp. And so now I'm doing a 2-week sprint where in 2 weeks, our team has to design an entire marketing website, which to me seems very quick to be able to do that. So I was very curious to see if we would be able to end up meeting this deadline. My team consists of 4 designers, including myself. So 2 of the other designers are other students of the bootcamp that I'm a part of. And then the other designer is actually a full-time UX designer that is acting as the lead designer for this project. And so we get the project brief from the client, and the client owns a recruitment agency for UX designers. And so the goal with this project is to create a marketing website that contains 4 landing pages for 4 different audiences. One is for enterprise businesses, the second is for small businesses and startups, the third is for recruiters, and the 4th is for referral sources, so people who already are employed through a company. And so each of these landing pages has a different value proposition, so there's certainly quite a few challenges that come out within this project. To kick things off, our team meets through Zoom just to introduce ourselves and gain some clarity on the project. And I like meeting through Zoom because it's really the only chance that we get to actually do face-to-face interaction. The rest of our communication has really just taken place through the Figma chat. And so because we have a really tight deadline, we kind of had to just get to brass tacks pretty quickly. And so we start chatting about what we need to do next. And so the first phase that we need to do is each of us is to design a wireframe of the landing page so that we have a skeleton for how each of the different landing pages will be designed going forward. And so each of us is to make a wireframe, and then in 2 days we need to have it finished because we are going to present them and for each of our designs in front of the team, and then we'll kind of vote on which one we like best or just mix and match what we like from each of our wireframes into a final wireframe. So I get to my wireframes and I'm using inspiration from Untitled UI, which is a Figma UI kit that I've talked about on here, as well as Turing, which is a kind of similar company to our client, except they deal with developers instead of designers. And I gotta be honest here, I get into some pretty significant designer's block. Because I happen to be working late from my day job as a physical therapist, my creative energy is just very low when I'm working on these wireframes, and that just does not help things at all. So with that said, I don't even finish my wireframes on time. I have about 75% of them done, but I'm missing a pricing section, I'm missing a call to action section, and a footer section. And to make to make it more uncomfortable for me, when we finally meet in Figma to go over our designs, the wireframes that my teammates come up with look incredible. And so now I start to get imposter syndrome thinking, okay, I'm not good enough. I'm clearly not on the caliber that my teammates are on. And so I get a little bit self-defeating in that area. But I will say we do decide to go with one of the sections that I have in my wireframes, which is a process section that lays out the steps to get started with this service and 3 easy steps. And so everyone on our team really liked that. So we end up using that. All the other sections, though, we mix and match what we like from each of our wireframes and then go from there. Okay, wireframes, check. Clock is ticking. We got to work on style guide. We have 2 days to come up with this. And so this imposter syndrome that I'm feeling now from seeing the amazing work that the other designers are doing, is kind of turning into motivation to really try to bring my all here. And so for the goals for this section of the project are to come up with a typography palette I guess you call it a palette, and a color palette. And so for typography, I honestly just tried to keep things simple, and I just used the Untitled UI Kit font size selections. Now I changed the font because they use Enter, and I just feel like Enter is used so often that it has lost all uniqueness. So I decided to go with Poppins, which is a pretty similar font, but I find is less widely used and therefore is a little more unique. As far as a color palette, I decided to go with purple as a primary color. Initially, I was going to go with blue. And then I started to realize that a lot of companies use blue, especially in the technology sector. So it feels like there's nothing that stands out if we use blue. I decided to go with purple because it's less commonly used, and it also represents characteristics of innovation. And what was the other one? Innovation and creativity. And both of those just pair really nicely with the fact that this is a technology service designed to recruit UX designers. Okay, so I feel happy about my style guide. The deadline is here, so now we are meeting in Figma again to talk about each of our style guides and our rationale for them. And so as far as typography, we actually go with SF Pro, which is an Apple font. The majority of the group decided to go with that just because they feel it goes with the brand better. And then as far as colors, our team is pretty much split. So half of us want blue and then half of us want purple. And so I gave the rationale that I just gave in this video about why purple might be a better choice to go with. And the team really seemed to resonate with this. And so as far as color, we decided to go with purple for the overall brand color. Okay, now we have less than a week left and we have to design the hi-fi screens. But we can't do the hi-fi screens yet because if we just divvied up the 4 different landing pages amongst us, there could be some major design inconsistencies even though we have a style guide. So what we decided to do is each design a portion of the landing page. So we do the first 3 sections of the landing page, and each of us is to design a high fidelity version of that. And then just like the other parts, we would come together and then figure out what we like from each of our designs and then make a final version that we would use for the actual landing page. And then once we have that, then we can divvy up the different landing pages and work on them individually. Because the wireframes have been established, my real goal with designing the UI iterations is to figure out what kind of graphics do I want to use to enhance the visual appeal of this landing page, and then any sort of components like cards, figuring out what those might look like. The copy isn't really as relevant at this stage. It's really just trying to get an overall visual representation of what a polished landing page might look like, or a portion of it at least. And so for me, I decide to go with illustrations for the graphics as opposed to real photos. I just think a lot of other modern sites in this sort of category tend to use illustrations as opposed to real photos, so I decided to go that route. I source a lot, actually all of my illustrations from Icon Scout. It's a subscription service that I pay yearly for, but I think it's worth it because I can download all of the illustrations into SVG, and then because it's SVG, I can change each of the colors of the illustration in Figma to match the brand colors that we're using. So I put together my UI iteration just in time for the deadline, and then we all come together as a group to meet in Figma to figure out what we like from each of our designs. And I have to say, again, I am blown away at the level of skill that the other designers have on this team. Like, one of the designers had these just a bunch of cool flourishes to make the landing page look immensely polished, using highlights behind some of the words to make them pop more, as well as using just these little, I guess, illustration flourishes around just to, again, make it look more polished and modern. It's not something that I've really tried doing before, and it's something that I just learned by seeing how she designed her landing page. And so I just take a lot of inspiration from that. One of the big things we noticed, though, is that some of us decided to go with illustrations for the graphics, and some of us decided to go with real photos. And we really like features of both. And so we decide to see if we can blend them and see if we can blend having some illustrations and having some photos and even meshing them together into one kind of unified graphic. And so that's what we decide to do for the hi-fi section. And so that honestly just makes me nervous because I have a lot less skill in that department. So yeah, definitely challenging. After our meeting, it's hi-fi time. So I get to working on the hi-fis, and as I predicted, I'm having trouble figuring out how to blend illustrations and photos. And so I actually borrowed an idea from one of the other designers on my team where she created this cool kind of illustration card to look like a profile, but then actually put a real photo in it. And so I used that, but then put an illustration that I found on Icon Scout behind it. And I think it looked kind of like what I would want to when it comes to blending real photos and illustrations. And I sort of just had to go through that process throughout my landing page. So figuring out how am I going to incorporate real photos with illustrations that I find on Icon Scout or wherever else. And that was definitely the biggest challenge to this whole project, or this doing the high fidelity part of this project. So we have a little more time to work on this. So I'm working on this for 3 days, and then we finally come back together and then go over each of our designs. And there's a lot of back and forth revisions that take place, and this video is already long, so I'm not gonna go into all of the detail that we did as far as revisions go. But needless to say, the main things that we were trying to do was make sure that the way that we were speaking and our copy was fairly unified between all of us, as well as trying to make sure that whatever graphics that we use, we wanna make sure that there's brand alignment among them. So we don't want someone's illustration to look vastly different than someone else's illustration. So just making sure that a lot of that was copacetic. After a long meeting and lots of revisions, we finally have arrived at our final designs for each of the 4 different landing pages. So now we have to build this out, and we have 2 days left. Only we're not actually the ones that are building this out. We are collaborating with a developer who is building this out on Webflow. And I've never worked with a developer, so this is sort of a new endeavor for me. Basically, what the developer is doing is looking at our Figma files and then designing what he sees or building what he sees onto Webflow. And so as he's building it out, we can see previews of what it looks like in our browser. And if we see anything that doesn't look quite right, we would screenshot what we see, put it on Figma, and then make a note of what we see. And so this could be anything from a heading being the wrong size or aligned incorrectly, spacing inconsistencies, or just the developer would sometimes let us know if there were things that we designed that just couldn't logistically be developed in Webflow. So we never actually meet with the developer to talk face to face. We just exchange comments back and forth until we arrive at the final product. So after a couple days of back and forth revisions between us, the designers, and the developer, we finally have the product and we submit it to the client. So now we have to wait. So tension is building because we don't know what the client's going to think at this point. So a few hours go by, and then we finally get a response from the client, and she loves it. I mean, really loves it, it seems like. We're pretty much 90% there. There were some minor revisions that she wants us to do, and so we go ahead and make those. None of them are real major. We just had to make some 10% changes, and then it's done. But yeah, if there's one thing that this project has taught me, it's that it really challenged my belief on how quickly we can design an entire website from scratch, and like a really high quality one at that. And I think part of the reason that we were able to do that is just our team meshed so well together. We're able to resolve any design differences very quickly, and we all just sort of saw eye to eye on a lot of different design decisions. And I think that really helped with us being able to just design things efficiently. And because all of the designers on this team were really skilled, and I mean, I honestly felt like I was the least skilled one in the group, I think it pushed all of us to really do the best that we possibly can. And I think that's why we ended up with what I consider to be a really nice looking landing page. I talk a lot about Untitled UI in this video, and that is a really neat Figma UI kit that I use, and it really helps with just being able to set up websites quickly, and you can even use it as a design system so that you don't have to design absolutely everything from scratch. So if you want to learn more about that, you can check that out in this video here. Highly recommend that. If you found this video to be helpful, then definitely hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. That would help me out a lot. And I have my Discord group, Designers Den, if you want to join some like-minded designers to help grow ourselves and support each other. Definitely join that at the link below. And until next time, I will see you in the next video. Take care.